One more outburst like that, Mr. Miller, and I'll hold you in contempt. The judge's face turned a deep shade of red, and I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing at how comical she looked. Mr. Johnson, I suggest you get your client under control. I'd already been warned more than once, but cursing just slips out when it's a regular part of your vocabulary. As I opened my mouth to respond, I could see the judge tense up, and my lawyer, Mr. Johnson, who was also a senior partner at the firm, warned me to be careful if I didn't want to spend the night in a cell. The court reporter tried to suppress a laugh, bracing for whatever was about to spill out of my mouth. Across the room, my ex-best friend, his wife, and my soon-to-be ex-wife sat there, nervously eyeing everyone. Lisa, my soon-to-be ex, looked embarrassed and defeated. Paul had the same expression of resignation, while his wife, Jessica, was visibly fuming. She clearly wasn't enjoying having all their skeletons dragged out in court. At this point, you're probably wondering what led to me being scolded by the pompous figure in the black robe over my behavior in her courtroom. It all started one day. Well, let's call it Friday, because that's what it was. My name's John Miller. I'm 39 and work as a foreman in the city maintenance department here in Riverbank, Nevada. I started this job 2 days after I finished high school. In the winter, I clear the main roads when it snows. In the summer, I handle whatever needs doing. My wife Lisa works part-time at the local church, more of a break from housework than anything else. The maintenance department is divided into 4 areas, each with a supervisor and a foreman. I'm a foreman, not a supervisor, never went to college, and I tend to rely more on common sense. Also, I'm not one to kiss up to get ahead. The truth is, when a supervisor gives an order, they usually run it by someone like me first to make sure it's not a waste of time. All the foremen got promoted from within, while supervisors were hired from outside. Thursday night brought one of those nasty May storms, full of high winds and hail. My area took the brunt of it, so we had a mess of fallen branches and other debris to clean up off the streets. I had 6 crews with dump trucks working on clearing the debris. I spent the day driving around in a pickup, checking on reports of street flooding to see if storm drains were clogged. If they were, I'd send one of the 2 vacuum trucks out to clear them. I also had 4 street sweepers running nonstop. In the afternoon, I checked out the problem areas in the alleys to see if we'd need to bring in gravel soon. None of my 3 parks got mowed that day, so I knew I'd have to get a crew on it the next morning. Lisa and I lived in a nice 4-bedroom, 2-story house in an older neighborhood. We couldn't afford to live with the rich folks on the southwest side of town, but we didn't live in the rougher part of town either. We got along great with our neighbors. Tim and Megan Stevens lived next door. Ron and Becky were behind us. My childhood friend, Paul Thompson, and his wife, Jessica, lived behind the Stevens. The 4 families were so close that none of us bothered with fences between our yards. Paul and I had been friends since middle school. I got him into more trouble than he could handle. And to make things worse, his parents were super religious, while mine didn't give 2 cents about what God had to say. My dad used to tell me as long as I didn't get a girl pregnant or cost him money, he didn't care what I did. Most of the time, when Paul's parents were ready to ground him for something, I'd step in and say it was my fault. They already hated me anyway, so it didn't make a difference to me. Paul grew up to be just as religious as his parents, maybe even more. He went off to Bible college and ended up becoming a pastor. These days, he leads one of the local churches. As for me, I only step into a church on Easter and Christmas. My wife Lisa, though, is a devout churchgoer. Couldn't resist the pun there. While Paul was at college, he met Jessica. Jessica looked like she could have stepped right off a runway. 5 feet 8 inches, 115 pounds, blonde hair, blue eyes, and a figure straight out of a magazine. 36C, 24, 34. But with all those looks, she's also one of the most devout women I've ever met. Paul and I are like night and day, but there was a time when I'd have done anything for him, or so I thought. I came home that Friday evening to find leftover meatloaf from Sunday waiting for me in the fridge. Now, I didn't mind reheating it, but the thing was, Lisa hadn't actually cooked a weekday meal in months. I felt like unwinding with a 6-pack, but the red mark on the calendar for that day told me I had to stick to just 1 beer with dinner. Red duty meant I was on standby and could be called out any time to deal with an emergency. While I ate, Lisa was in the shower. I couldn't help but wish she'd spend half the time paying attention to me as she did in there. By 7 p.m., I figured I might not see her again for the rest of the night. When I got home earlier, I barely got a half-hearted, "How was your day?" That was about all I'd been getting from her these past couple of months. The worst part, though, was our sex life. We used to go at it 3 or 4 times a week. But in the last 3 months, I'd had Saturday night sex twice, and both times it was the same boring missionary, and 2 half-hearted handjobs. It felt like she didn't even see me anymore, and that night wasn't any different. So I sat back and watched the Bears take on the 49ers, wishing I could drown the night in whiskey. Around 10 o'clock, I was thinking about calling it a night when my phone rang. I figured it was Paul, wanting to gripe about how the Bears' defense was falling apart or asking me to get one of my crews to do some work around his church. But instead, it was dispatch, calling to tell me there was a water main break on the north side, near River Heights Plaza. I grabbed a few snacks from my cooler and headed out the door. I almost went upstairs to tell Lisa where I was going, but decided against it. She didn't seem to care much lately anyway. Let her figure out on her own that I wasn't coming to bed. Once I got to the city yard, I grabbed the keys I needed. While waiting for my crew to arrive, guys from every quadrant were being pulled in, along with a water department supervisor and 4 of his men. I hooked up a trailer to the new Kenworth dump truck and loaded a Caterpillar backhoe onto it. By the time I finished loading up, the crew had shown up, and we all headed out to where we thought the break was. Sure enough, the northeast quadrant crews hadn't gotten to the storm sewers yet, and the street was flooded. I sent a couple of guys back to get a vacuum truck. It wasn't until 1 o'clock in the morning that I finally got the backhoe into the pavement. The street was still full of water, so things moved slowly. By 3 o'clock, we'd exposed the pipe and started hauling away the muddy mess I'd dug up. We wouldn't have fresh, dry sand and gravel from the city pit to fill the hole until 8:30 a.m. The water crew had reconnected the pipe by then and tested the repair. The building inspector gave the okay around 9:15, and by noon, we were ready to repave the street. Since paving was handled by an outside contractor, I was able to get all the equipment back to the yard by 12:45. By 1:15, I was pulling into my driveway, knowing I was off work until Saturday. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house seemed empty. Lisa was off doing whatever it is she does all day, which, from what I could tell lately, didn't involve much cleaning. I headed into the kitchen, grabbed a beer and a sandwich, and had just closed the fridge when I heard a sound I couldn't mistake. A woman moaning, loud enough to make it clear she was getting the ride of her life. The noise was coming from upstairs. I stood still for a second, listening, and was pretty sure that's where it was coming from. "No wonder you don't touch me anymore, you sneaky woman," I muttered under my breath, leaving the kitchen. I opened the coat closet, pulled out my Smith & Wesson .45 from its hiding spot, and started up the stairs. The sound got louder as I climbed. The door to the master bedroom was slightly open, so I crept toward it, quietly. I swung the door open and aimed the pistol at the bed. Empty. I quickly checked the bathroom attached to the bedroom. Nothing there either. Back in the hallway, I had 2 doors left. At least she didn't disrespect our marriage bed, I thought. The guest room door was closed, so I flung it open and aimed the pistol at another empty room. That left only Lisa's craft room. I could already picture her bent over her sewing table, with some guy going to town on her. I kicked the door open and charged in, ready to fire. But the room was empty, though the sound was definitely louder in there. I noticed the window overlooking the backyard was wide open. I glanced outside, half expecting to see her fooling around in the yard. Instead, I saw that the lawn needed mowing, but no sign of Lisa. As I scanned the nearby yards, my jaw dropped. What the hell? The Stevens have a pool? My eyes locked on Tim and Megan, their college-age kids, going at it like rabbits on a lounge chair by their pool. Tim was in his junior year of college, and Megan was set to start as a freshman in the fall. Megan had a crush on me since she was about 12, and I caught myself absurdly wondering if I ever crossed her mind in that moment. Neither of them was much to look at, but Megan had an incredible body, and her breasts were bouncing wildly as Tim pounded her. Then it hit me. I was watching something incestuous unfold. I thought, this kind of stuff only happens in Alabama or West Virginia. I knew I shouldn't keep watching, but it was like a car wreck. I just couldn't turn away. Did Tim and Megan's parents have any clue what was happening in their backyard? I doubted it. They weren't as uptight as Paul and Jessica, but still, no parent I knew would be okay with this. I bet they're watching us. Look at them, Megan said to Tim. Oh man, that's so hot, Tim replied. I followed her gaze to the left and saw what she was looking at. In the window of the house next door, I could see Paul's bare back as he clearly went to work on someone. I thought I'd stick around for a minute. This might be my only chance to catch a glimpse of Jessica naked. But then Paul and his partner turned around. Holy! I yelled so loud that the action in the yard below came to a stop. I couldn't believe my eyes. It wasn't Jessica Paul was with. It was Lisa. My blood went cold and I froze, unsure what to do next. My instincts took over, and I raised the pistol, aiming straight at Paul. But movement down below caught my eye. Tim and Megan were sprinting, naked, for their house. I turned back to take the shot at Paul, but by the time I looked up, he and Lisa had disappeared from the window. "Goddamn dirty woman!" I shouted as I stomped down the stairs. I stopped in my den long enough to grab my Mossberg bullpup and loaded it with a few rounds of 00 buckshot. I wasn't just going to kill Paul, I was going to wipe them both out. Hell, even Jessica's dumb cat and bird weren't off limits. I tucked the pistol into the waistband of my jeans and stormed out the front door. But halfway down the driveway, I stopped dead in my tracks. A lot of things clicked into place in that moment. Now I understood why my house was a mess. I understood why I'd been eating frozen dinners for months. I understood why my little Larry had been left out in the cold. I even understood why she took so many long showers that they might as well name the city's water reservoir after me. I walked back up the driveway and got into my truck, backing out hard enough to leave tire marks on the street as I headed toward Home Depot. My mind raced with everything I had just learned. Lisa hadn't been cooking because Paul was wearing her out. She couldn't exactly mop or vacuum while getting her freak on, could she? The real question that kept pounding in my head was, why had the two people I trusted most in the world stabbed me in the back like that? I was on autopilot as I pulled into Home Depot and made a beeline for the door section. I grabbed 3 new lock sets. Jenny from the paint counter waved at me, and I almost missed it. I half-heartedly waved back. When I got home, I found Jenna and Tim waiting in my driveway. What the hell do these two want? I thought to myself. They both looked like they were expecting to be marched off to their executions. Jenna gave me a nervous smile. "We're sorry for disturbing you, Mr. Miller. We didn't mean to offend you, it's just—" I cut her off. "Look, I couldn't care less if you two screw each other until the cows come home. It's none of my business. You're not even on my radar right now." They looked relieved, then turned and slunk back to their house. I could feel Jenna's eyes on me as I walked inside. I set the lock sets down and went to find my tools. The anger bubbled up in my chest as I got closer to the kitchen, and when I stepped in, my blood boiled over. There, sitting at my kitchen table, was Paul. "What the hell are you doing in my house, you worthless backstabber?" "I came to talk to you, man, like a friend." "Friend?" I laughed bitterly. "That's rich. With friends like you, who needs enemies? What do you want me to say?" "Hey, Paul, how's my wife's body treating you today?" "John, it doesn't have to be like this. You're right, Paul, it doesn't. Do me a favor, pass me that butcher knife." I slid a knife across the table to him. He looked at it, then back at the Smith & Wesson in my hand. "Come on, John," he said, his voice shaky. "You can't be serious. Pick it up, you piece of trash. You love Jesus so much? Well, here's your chance to meet him. Pick up the damn knife and let me put that make my day law to use on your sorry ass." Paul jumped up and bolted for the door. He stopped on the porch and turned back to me. "John, we've been friends forever. Are you really willing to throw all that away? I lost 2 people I cared about today, Paul. When this is all said and done, I'll realize they weren't much of a loss. Where's Lisa?" "She's at my place. She's too scared to come here." "Well, you tell her she's got 5 minutes to get her sorry self over here if she wants any chance of staying married to me. Now get the hell off my property before I risk prison just to feel better." Paul scrambled off, and I wondered how long it would take Lisa to drag her cheating ass home. 4 minutes later, I didn't have to wonder anymore. I could hear her crying and sniffling before I even saw her. I bet the neighbors were all watching as she came down the sidewalk bawling like a baby. She reached out to hug me, but I took a step back. Keep your filthy hands to yourself. But I love you, John. There's no one I'd rather spend my life with than you. Let's take this inside. The last thing I need is the neighbors in our business. I walked into the living room and sat down in my favorite chair. Lisa sat across from me on the love seat. "Would you come sit next to me?" she asked. "Hell no. I don't want to be anywhere near you." I hate awkward silences, so I dove right into it. "So, how long have you been letting that bastard have his way with you?" "He loves you like a brother, John. He's your best friend." "Was my best friend." "I don't think so. Friends don't sleep with each other's wives." "It's just sex. I still love you." What a load of crap. It's just sex? Whoever came up with that excuse deserves a cinder block to the head, I shouted. There's no reason to be angry. You still have me. I'm not going anywhere. The hell you aren't. You've already chosen Paul over me in our marriage. You can't spare me 5 minutes of attention, but you'll bend over for him at the drop of a hat. Real classy. I felt a headache coming on and buried my head in my hands. She stood up and started walking toward me. Sit your butt back down. I hope this fling is worth throwing away 10 years of marriage. I'm not ending our marriage. We can stay together. I'll just keep having sex with Paul. I love the way he feels inside me. But it's just physical. I don't love him, just his body. He even said I can still come by and take care of your needs once or twice a week. Well, isn't that considerate of him? I think I'll go ahead and find someone else to meet my needs. No, you're my husband. No one else should be having sex with you except me. We're still man and wife. Not for much longer. At this rate, ex-wife is sounding more appropriate for someone who drops her pants for a low-life hypocrite like Paul Thompson. No, don't say that. I love you with all my heart. But I love Paul's big package too. You just have to understand. Paul's got it all figured out, sweetheart. We can all be happy. Oh, I understand perfectly. You want to have your cake and eat it too. It's not like that at all. Then explain it to me, for God's sake. I can't. You wouldn't get it. Well, I think Paul wants me back in about 3 minutes, she blurted out. What the hell are you rambling about, you clueless idiot? I shouted, utterly floored. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. You've never talked to me like this before. You've never called me names. What's gotten into you? Oh gee, let me think. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that I've been awake since 6 a.m. yesterday, worked all through the night, and then came home to find my wife screwing some other guy. You tell me, you cheating? She started crying and headed for the door. That's right, go to Paul. Go get yourself some more of the big meat you've been craving. At the door, she wiped her tears and turned around. I don't understand why we can't just keep things the way they are now. It's not like you're home all the time. I can be with him while you're at work. And 4 or 5 nights. I slammed the door so hard I thought it might crack. Screw you! Go have your damn cake! I yelled so loud my throat hurt for half an hour afterward. I sat with my back against the door for a while, doing something I hadn't done in years, crying. My old man would have whipped me for shedding tears, so I sucked it up and got on with what needed to be done. I changed the locks on every door and reprogrammed the garage door opener. By the time 4 o'clock rolled around, I needed a break. I was running on fumes. I flopped down on the couch, flipped on the TV, and landed on Jerry Springer. How fitting. Today's episode was about cheating wives and messed up families. I didn't get far into the show before exhaustion took over. When I woke up, it was after 9 o'clock, and someone was knocking at the door. I dragged myself out of the chair and went to see who it was. Standing on my porch was Paul. What do you want, you worthless? I ought to beat the living hell out of you for showing up here. I need a favor, man. You've got to be kidding me. I don't even have a girlfriend for you to mess around with, Paul. Go try someone else. Jessica needs you. She's at home crying her eyes out. Can't you just call her and tell her you're not mad and that everything's going to be okay? I tell you what, since she loves you so much, why don't you let your big meat tell her everything's going to be fine? I'm done with both of you. How do you think she'll react when she finds out you've been screwing Lisa? She already knows. She's happy about it, actually, since we don't have to sneak around anymore. She wants you and Lisa to stay together, though. Get your sick, twisted ass off my porch. Tell Lisa her stuff will be waiting out here in the morning. If anyone knocks on my door, it's not going to end well. I slammed the door again and headed for the fridge to grab a cold beer. For some reason, I decided to take the six-pack upstairs and sit in Lisa's craft room, looking out the window. After a few minutes, it hit me. I should have grabbed the video camera to collect some solid evidence for the divorce. I grabbed the camcorder and settled back in, watching Mike's house for any signs of activity. But something next door caught my eye. Jerry Stevens was out by their pool, wearing a robe. I prayed to God it would stay on, or, at the very least, that she had a one-piece swimsuit underneath. Jerry was one of the kindest people I knew, but she had fallen hard from the ugly tree and hit every branch on the way down. And unlike her daughter, there wasn't much about her body to distract from her face. It still boggled my mind that Tim and Jenna had managed to turn out merely unattractive instead of downright hideous. Must have been some recessive genes working in their favor. Of course, my luck wasn't with me that day. Jerry took off her robe and dove into the pool. I quickly shifted my attention back to Mike's house, switching the camera to night vision. I spotted Sarah and Alice sitting on the porch swing, but they weren't talking loudly enough for me to pick up what they were saying, so I didn't bother recording. A pair of headlights swept across the back of Mike's house, signaling that Tim had just gotten home. He worked late most nights managing a restaurant. He headed straight for the pool and started undressing. What the hell did I do to deserve this? I thought, half in disbelief. I kept my focus on Mike's house while I heard the splash of Tim jumping into the pool. He and Jerry cozied up, treading water. Their voices carried clearly across the yard. How was work, babe? Busy as all hell. Had to fire one of the servers for smoking weed during his break. I told him it'd be his last warning. I heard some news today. Oh yeah? What's that? John kicked Lisa out today. What? No way. He actually kicked her out? Has he lost his mind? I always thought those two couldn't live without each other. I figured if anything, she'd be the one to leave him, probably for his mouth. You must have it wrong. Nope, according to Timmy and Jenna. They were cleaning the pool. Well, cleaning the pool, if you know what I mean. And they saw Mike and Lisa in his window going at it. I guess John must have come home unexpectedly, 'cause they heard him shout some profanity, and Mike and Lisa stopped pretty fast. John left the house, came back with a Home Depot bag, and changed all the locks. Later, when Lisa came over, he slammed the door behind her and called her a... I can't believe it, Tim said, shaking his head. I'll have to check on John tomorrow, make sure he's doing all right. I think you should stay away from Mike. I've always thought he looked at both you and Lisa in a way he shouldn't. I shuddered at the thought of Mike mentally undressing Jerry. What a sick creep. Jenna said she's gonna take John a cake tomorrow to cheer him up. She's always thought highly of him. Crude as he is, I wouldn't want anyone else on my side if I needed help. I saw him earlier working on that street near the mall. Was he wearing a hard hat? Yeah, why? You and your thing for construction workers. Maybe I'll get John to model it for you. I shuddered again. Normally, a guy doesn't mind hearing a woman say she finds him attractive. But for a good few weeks after moving next to Tim and Jerry, I was convinced they were a gay couple. Jerry can look pretty masculine when she wants to. You're terrible, she giggled. I just can't understand why Lisa would cheat on John with Mike when she has him at home. You're making me feel insecure now. Oh, you know you're the only man for me, my handsome stud. The moment I realized they were about to start fooling around, I decided it was time to head to bed. I didn't know if I'd actually get any sleep, but I sure as hell didn't want nightmares of Tim and Jerry getting it on. I turned on the radio, needing some background noise, and caught the grindcore show on the college station. They were playing some killer tracks by Carcass, Deicide, and Obituary. Right before the show ended, they played Cannibal Corpse's Make Them Suffer. As I listened to the lyrics, it dawned on me that I wanted to make Mike and Lisa suffer. So when Corpse Grinder screamed, "Make them suffer, make them suffer, make them suffer," I muttered, "I will, Corpse Grinder, I will." The next morning, I was jolted awake by someone pounding on the door. Shaking off the last bits of sleep, I went downstairs, ready to chew out whoever had the audacity to bother me so early. I opened the door, fully expecting it to be Lisa, but standing there was Sarah Andrews. "Oh, it's you. What do you want, Sarah? Alice isn't packed just yet." "I'm not here for her stuff, Jeff. I'm here to ask you to let her come back home." Well, here I was expecting something unreasonable. "I'm going back to bed." I started to shut the door, but she quickly stuck her hand in the way. "Wait, Jeff, please. Why are you doing this? Alice is hurting, and you won't even think about her feelings." "What's there to consider? She'd rather be with you and Paul than me. I'm just letting her have what she clearly wants and staying out of the way. Jeff, Mike, and I can't have her move in with us. We have an image to maintain. You two cheating perverts should have thought about that before dragging my wife into your twisted little game. What's the real reason she can't stay with you? You don't see any issue here? I gave her the chance to stay, and she chose your husband's charm over me. The most messed up part is that you're okay with it, but I'm not. Now leave me alone, will you? She still loves you, Jeff. We never wanted to take her away from you. We love her, and we love you too. I hate seeing you throw away your friendship with Mike," Sarah pleaded, tears filling her eyes like she actually thought this could be fixed. I stared at her, completely out of patience. "Mike's dead to me. So is Alice." "You don't mean that. She'll still take care of your needs." "Oh, now I get it. I feed her, give her a place to live, buy her clothes, her car, and everything else she needs. Meanwhile, she keeps sleeping with both of you, and I get a half-hearted hand job once a week. Mike gets his harem without spending a dime to keep her. No thanks." I leaned in closer, sarcasm dripping from my voice. "Do I get some special time with you too, Sarah?" "Sorry, Jeff. I'm a one-man woman." "A one-man woman?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Well, I'd sure love to find one of those. Guess that's what I'll do now. Tell Alice her things will be out here in an hour or so." Sarah's face hardened. "Come on, Jeff. Stop acting like a caveman and step into the modern world. Mike and I have an image to protect with our church. We can't have Alice living with us? Well, it sounds like you've got yourself a real problem. Sucks to be you," I said as I slammed the door in her face. I stormed off to the kitchen, muttering to myself, "Screw their image." Cracking open a beer, I sat down at the table, fuming. The audacity. They thought I'd be okay with this ridiculous arrangement. They wanted to look squeaky clean while having wild sex with my wife? Corpse Grinder's voice echoed in my head again. Make them suffer. I picked up the phone and called a guy from work. He'd been through a nasty divorce a few years back and came out with almost everything. His ex-wife had been caught cheating, with her own brother no less. Seems like inbreeding was a running theme around here lately. He gave me the name of the law firm that had helped him, Turner, Collins, and Wright. I called and managed to book an appointment that afternoon with one of their top divorce lawyers. Then, I got to work. I stuffed all of Alice's clothes, toiletries, and personal crap into garbage bags and threw them out onto the porch. I boxed up whatever else I knew she'd want and added that to the pile. Her car keys? Under the floor mat. Then I headed for the bank. At the bank, I canceled all of our joint credit cards and closed the shared account. I opened a new one in just my name. To my surprise, they told me she had a credit card I didn't even know about. "Send the bill to Mike's place," I told them. By 1 p.m., I was sitting at Turner, Collins, and Wright. I'd hoped to get Richard Turner himself, the firm's bulldog, famous for tearing opposing lawyers apart. Instead, I got assigned to Derek White. He looked a little scruffy, but his record spoke for itself. Derek sat in silence for a while, skimming through the files I'd brought in. Then he looked up, called his paralegal in, and gave her some instructions. After she left with my paperwork, he leaned forward, his expression serious. "Mr. Miller, I think we can get you exactly what you want, and knock Mike down a few pegs while we're at it. Do you have any photos or video evidence?" "Not yet," I admitted. "But the neighbor kid saw them together. I don't care what she does once she's out of my life, though." The paralegal returned with a stack of documents. Derek went through each one, explaining them to me as I signed. Then, he handed me a list of things I needed to take care of, some of which I'd already handled. After paying the retainer, I walked out of there feeling sharper and more determined than I had in weeks. When I got home, Alice's belongings were gone from the porch, but there was a note taped to the front door. I brought it inside and tossed it on the coffee table without even bothering to read it. I wasn't in the mood for her excuses or apologies. I collapsed onto the couch, flipped on Jerry Springer, and let the noise wash over me until I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I was back at work, ready to put my plan into action. First up, I called the city's accounting department. I'd let my crews haul a few loads of gravel to Mike's church for free, but I had kept the tier slips. Now, I knew exactly why. I asked them to back-charge Mike's church for the gravel, plus transportation costs. At $45 a ton and $30 per load, Mike now owed the city $7,500. And to top it off, I made sure the building inspectors would be stopping by since Mike never bothered pulling permits for the work. Next, I had a friendly chat with the water company supervisor, casually wondering if Mike's church was up to code with their water meter. Turns out it wasn't. That would set them back another $1,200. I was going to bleed Mike dry. He was going to suffer. I also tipped off the building inspectors about some shady home renovations Mike had done. That was going to cost him even more. By noon, Mike was on the phone, fuming. "What the hell are you trying to pull, John?" "What are you talking about, Mike?" "Don't play dumb. Building inspectors just told me I need to rip up the entire parking lot. You said everything would be fine." "Well, looks like I forgot to submit some paperwork. But don't worry, we'll be reprimanded. I hope they fire your ass." Right on cue, my supervisor walked in. I waved him over, putting the call on speaker. "Hey John, about that late paperwork. Remind me to add a scathing post-it note to your file." "Will do, boss," I replied, grinning. "I'll try not to let it happen again." Mike was steaming on the other end of the line. "That's it? That's your big reprimand? I can't believe they didn't fine you." "Oh, don't worry. I've got all my tier slips in order. You'll be getting the bill soon enough, Mike." He hung up without another word. Exactly what I expected. That night, I stopped by Moe's bar for more than a few beers. By 11 o'clock, most of the regulars, city workers, cops, and firefighters, had heard my story, and a full-blown harassment campaign was in motion. One of my cop buddies mentioned that Mike might start getting pulled over a little more often. A firefighter pal joked that Mike's church might get some extra attention from the fire marshal during the next inspection. "These churches always have something out of compliance," he said with a sly grin. "Normally we go easy on them, but in this case, the safety of the congregation's a priority." Sheila Torres, a secretary over at the county clerk's office, hinted that the assessor might discover a little mistake in Mike's property tax records from last year. That would mean an unexpected bill for back taxes, make them suffer indeed. The next morning, I was in my garage, working on some repairs, when I heard a noise behind me. These idiots just don't learn, do they? I thought, turning around, expecting to see Alice. But instead, I found myself face to face with Jenna. Hi John, Mr. Miller." "Hey Jenna, what's up?" I asked, doing my best to keep the annoyance out of my voice. She stood there in a skimpy bikini and thong, looking like she was up to no good. She handed me a USB stick, her hand lingering in mine longer than it should have. "I have something you might want to see, Mr. Miller. I recorded it last week." I blinked, unsure of her intentions. There was something in her eyes I couldn't quite figure out. Lust? Spite? Whatever it was, I took the USB from her. "Thanks. I'll check it out." "My pleasure, John. You take care," she said, walking away slowly, glancing over her shoulder as if daring me to follow her. I watched her leave, feeling a mixture of disgust and curiosity. I shoved the USB stick into my pocket and got back to work. Later that afternoon, after finishing up mowing the lawn and hearing Alice's laughter from Mike's balcony, I remembered the USB stick and decided to give it a look. I plugged it into my laptop, and there was only one file on it. I clicked it open, and right away, the screen filled with a shot of Jenna, except she wasn't wearing anything below the waist. She was clearly, well, enjoying herself. As I watched in stunned silence, I heard her whispering, "Oh, babe, you have no idea how hot you make me. God, I'd love to ride your meat." I felt my stomach drop when I realized I could hear the hum of my lawnmower in the background, She had been watching me mow the lawn while doing that. I fast-forwarded through the video, eager to see why she'd brought it to me. After a minute or so, Tim walked into the room. "Hold it right there, miss. Are you Mike Morris?" What in the world? I cringed as it became clear I was some twisted fantasy in their house, but I kept watching. Tim, clearly playing along, grabbed the camera, and that's when the video took a turn. There on the screen were Mike, Alice, and Sarah, tangled in a full-blown threesome on their patio. I felt a surge of anger so strong I nearly choked on it. They had the nerve to pull this off, not just behind my back, but right next door, just yards from my home. I paused the video, staring at the frozen frame. These people, no, these traitors, had been mocking me, living out their depraved fantasies while I was busting my ass, trying to keep our life together. It all made sense now. The cold shoulder from Alice, the lack of effort in our marriage, the lousy attempts at intimacy. She'd been saving herself for this disgusting setup with my so-called best friend and his wife. But now, I had exactly what I needed. Solid proof. I could use this in court to make sure Alice didn't get a single thing from me. But as I stared at the screen, a better idea came to mind. One that would make them feel the consequences before we even stepped into a courtroom. They needed to be humiliated. I made a quick call to someone who owed me a favor. This video was going to serve a purpose long before any judge saw it. "Make them suffer," Corpse Grinder had said, and suffer they would. The next morning, I was up bright and early, feeling more in control than I had in weeks. I had my coffee and bagel, read the news, and by 10:30 a.m., I was dressed and heading over to Riverbank Presbyterian Church. Now, I'm not much of a churchgoer, but today was going to be special. When I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed a few unfamiliar faces, probably here for the same reason I was. I followed them inside, keeping a low profile, and found a seat about 3 rows from the front. The familiar scent of old wood and hymnals hung in the air, and the soft sound of organ music played in the background. I glanced around the room and spotted Rob Taylor, the guy who ran the church's audio-visual system. He worked on my park crew every now and then, and we had a pretty solid relationship. He owed me a favor or two, and today was the day to cash one in. I nodded in his direction, and he gave me a slight nod back. Everything was set. The service kicked off with the choir making their way in, with Sarah and Alice walking side by side. I wondered if any of the sweet old ladies in the congregation had the slightest idea what those two had been up to just the night before. Mike followed soon after, stepping up to the pulpit with his usual smug grin, blissfully unaware of what was about to go down. He started his sermon, droning on about forgiveness and the importance of keeping a pure heart. I had to stifle a laugh. The hypocrisy was so thick I could almost taste it. Conveniently, he skipped right over the 7th commandment, which wasn't much of a surprise. The irony was almost too good. After a few hymns, it was time for the offering. As the plates made their way around, I made sure my contribution, the USB stick, landed safely in Rob's hands when the plate came to him. He nodded, understanding exactly what needed to be done. He'd hit play at just the right moment. I leaned back in my seat, waiting. I knew what was coming, and the anticipation was almost unbearable. Mike wrapped up his sermon with a prayer, thanking God for the new faces in the congregation and inviting them to step forward and introduce themselves. That was my cue. I had arranged for 3 people to stand up at different points in the room. One by one, they made their way to the pulpit. The first was a young woman with dark hair. She grabbed the mic and said, "I'm here to see Sarah Morris." Sarah's eyes went wide, confusion flashing across her face as she slowly stood and awkwardly walked to the front. Next, a red-headed kid stood up and said, "I'm here for Alice Miller." Alice hesitantly joined Sarah at the front, throwing nervous glances at Mike. Finally, the last person stood up. Neil Wright, my boss's son. "Mike Morris, Sarah Morris, and Alice Miller, you've all been served," he announced, handing them each a set of legal documents. The look on Mike's face was priceless, but what happened next was even better. Right on cue, Rob hit play on the video. The big projection screen behind the pulpit lit up with a crystal-clear shot of Mike, Alice, and Sarah, caught in the middle of their little patio threesome. Gasps echoed through the sanctuary, followed by a stunned silence. A few elderly women clutched their pearls, their faces frozen in horror. I even spotted one woman frantically reaching for her phone, probably to call the cops, or at least her church gossip circle. And then, chaos erupted. One old lady hobbled toward the pulpit, swinging her cane at Mike and landing a direct hit right in the crotch. He doubled over, groaning in pain as the congregation exploded into pandemonium. Shouts, screams, and gasps filled the air. It was pure madness, but it was beautiful. Alice, after reading through her papers, let out a high-pitched scream that cut through the noise. I couldn't help but chuckle as I made my way toward the exit. But before I could slip out, I heard Alice shriek my name. "John! You bastard!" she screamed, charging toward me. I turned to face her, but before she could reach me, a police officer, who must have been nearby, stepped in and blocked her path. Days later, after the dust had settled and the district attorney decided not to press any charges against me, everything started falling into place. Mike had a privacy fence installed around his house as part of the restraining order he'd filed against me. The irony wasn't lost on me. He could keep me off his property, but he couldn't shield himself from public humiliation. Even better, Alice was included in the restraining order, meaning she couldn't contact me either. Except through my lawyer, Derek White. The assistant DA, Sonny Davis, had even chuckled when I explained how I slipped the USB stick into the collection plate for Rob to find. Mike had tried to press charges for trespassing, but since it was a public service, the case didn't go far. Rob lost his job at Mike's church, but he didn't stay out of work long. He quickly got hired over at the Presbyterian church across town. A couple of days after the chaos at the church, Derek gave me a call. "We've got our court date," he said. "We'll be going before Judge Julia Clark in 2 weeks. She's tough and tends to lean toward the wife in divorce cases, but since you already own the house, there aren't too many ways she can stick it to you. My only concern is alimony. She has a habit of awarding it, even to cheaters." When the day of the hearing arrived, I was ready. I had my evidence, my lawyer, and my determination. I wasn't just aiming to win. I wanted to make sure Alice and Mike paid for everything they had done. Walking into the courtroom, I spotted Mike, trying to put on a confident front. Alice was next to him, looking pitiful, and Sarah sat nearby, glaring at me like she could burn a hole through my skull. I didn't give any of them the time of day. The hearing kicked off, and Derek laid out our case. Judge Clark reviewed the evidence, her frown growing deeper as she watched the video and read through the statements. Mike's lawyer tried to argue that the video violated privacy laws, but Derek was ready for that. He pointed out that the footage was shot in plain view from a neighbor's window, so there was no expectation of privacy. Judge Clark wasn't impressed by the privacy argument. When it was Alice's turn to speak, she tried to play the victim card, claiming I was a neglectful husband. She said I worked too much and didn't pay attention to her needs. But Derek was one step ahead. He laid out the details of Alice's nights at Mike's place, the times she'd been seen with him, and of course the video that captured her infidelity in all its shameful glory. "Mrs. Miller," Judge Clark said, her voice stern, "your actions are deplorable. You've betrayed your husband in a way that cannot be overlooked." Alice's face went pale, like she'd just been slapped. "Mr. Miller," the judge continued, "there is no justification for you to pay alimony to a wife who has been so blatantly unfaithful. You will retain ownership of the house and all marital assets. Mrs. Miller, you are ordered to vacate the premises immediately. Court is adjourned." As I walked out of that courtroom, it felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my chest. I had won. Alice was left with nothing. Mike was left with nothing. And I was finally free. Driving home, I reflected on everything that had happened. I thought about Jenna's video and how it had tipped the scales in my favor. I thought about the hell I had put Mike through over the past few weeks. And then it hit me. Corpse Grinder had been right all along. I had made them suffer. And damn, it felt good.